Have you ever stopped to think about the most complex, most efficient, and, well, the absolute tiniest home you could possibly imagine? Well, we're about to take a tour of one right now, a single human cell. And to really get how it all works, we're going to think of it as a perfectly functional, microscopic apartment.
Okay, I know. It sounds like a trick question, right? One is so small you can't even see it, and the other literally scrapes the sky. But believe it or not, they share a really fundamental design principle. So what on earth could it be?
It all comes down to scale. See, a skyscraper is just a huge collection of individual apartments, all stacked together. And your body? It's a massive collection of trillions of individual cells. So for the next few minutes, let's use this apartment analogy to explore the incredible machinery packed inside just one of them.
All right, first things first. Every apartment needs a structure, right? We've got to have walls, support beams, and, stuff to fill the space inside. The walls of our cell apartment are built from these incredible little molecules called phospholipids. Now, each one has a head that loves water and a tail that absolutely hates it. So when you put them in water, something amazing happens. They automatically snap together into a perfect double-layered wall, with all their tails safely hidden on the inside. It's a self-assembling barrier. How cool is that?
So that double layer of phospholipids, that's the cell membrane, our apartment's walls. But these are not your average brick walls. They're semi-permeable. This means tiny things like oxygen can just slip right through, but bigger molecules get blocked. So how does the cell get its groceries in or take the trash out? It uses protein channels, which are basically the secure doors and windows, controlling exactly who and what gets to come and go.
Of course, an apartment needs an internal frame to keep the whole thing from collapsing into a puddle. For our cell, that's the cytoskeleton. It's this amazing, dynamic network of protein threads that gives the cell its structure. But it's also flexible, which allows the cell to change its shape, super important for things like our muscle cells. And it does double duty. It also acts as the apartment's internal highway system, a whole grid of roads for moving cargo around inside.
So what's filling up all the space inside our apartment? It's something called cytoplasm. The easiest way to think of it is as all the air and all the furniture combined. It's mostly a jelly-like fluid called the cytosol, and floating around inside are all the specialized rooms or organelles, which is where all the real work happens.
All right, now that we have the structure figured out, let's head into what is maybe the most important room in the whole apartment, the central office. This is where all the instructions are kept. This central office is the nucleus, and stored safely inside is the cell's most valuable possession, its DNA. This is it, the master blueprints. The instruction manuals for building every single protein the cell will ever need to function, to repair itself, and to communicate with its neighbors. Now get this. If you were to take the DNA from just one of your cells and stretch it out from end to end, it would be about 2 meters long. That's taller than most people. So how in the world do you cram 2 meters of anything into a microscopic office? Well, it's done through an absolutely incredible feat of biological engineering. First, the long string of DNA is coiled around these tiny proteins called histones, kind of like wrapping thread around a spool. This makes it look like pearls on a string. Then, that string of pearls is folded over and over and over again, packing it super tightly into the structure we all recognize as a chromosome. It's an absolutely genius storage solution. Okay, so we've got the blueprints locked away safe in the office. Now, let's see how our apartment actually builds stuff. Welcome to the factory floor. So the master blueprints, the DNA, are way too valuable to ever leave the office. So instead, when the cell needs to build something, it makes a quick photocopy of just the relevant section. That copy is called messenger RNA, or mRNA. That copying process, it's called transcription. Then, that mRNA message travels out of the office to a builder, who reads the instructions, that's called translation, and gets to work building the final protein.
And who is this master builder? It's the ribosome. The best way to think of a ribosome is as the apartment's workshop, equipped with a tiny little 3D printer. It just clamps onto that mRNA blueprint and meticulously starts building the protein, one piece, one amino acid at a time, exactly to spec. Now, many of these ribosome workshops are located on the surface of a huge, sprawling network called the endoplasmic reticulum, or just the ER for short. The part that's covered in ribosomes looks kind of bumpy under a microscope, so we call it the rough ER. This is the main factory for building proteins. But then there's another part, the smooth ER, that has a totally different job. It makes lipids and hormones, and in some cells, it even detoxifies nasty chemicals, which makes it kind of like the apartment's spa or bathroom. So, once the proteins and lipids are made over in the ER factory, They need to be sorted, packaged up, and shipped out to wherever they need to go. And for that, we head to the Golgi apparatus. This is basically the apartment's combination garage and post office.
The Golgi packages everything up into these little bubbles called vesicles. You can think of them as the cell's cardboard boxes. Some are transport vesicles, and they just move packages to other rooms inside the apartment. Others are secretory vesicles. They travel to the outer wall and dump their contents outside the cell, kind of like taking out the trash. And then some special vesicles become lysosomes, which are like an internal cleanup crew, filled with digestive enzymes to break down any waste.
Okay, our apartment is built, it's furnished, and it's running a whole factory. But none of that can happen without power. You got to keep the lights on, right? So it's time to visit the utility closet.
The power for the entire operation is supplied by the mitochondria. These are the apartment's power generators. They take in fuel, like glucose and fatty acids from the food we eat, and they use oxygen to convert that fuel into a massive amount of usable energy for the cell. And these things are incredibly efficient. For every single molecule of glucose that goes in, the mitochondria can crank out about 32 molecules of ATP, which is the cell's energy currency. That is an amazing return on investment, and it powers literally everything we've just talked about. Now, sometimes the mitochondria get a type of fuel they can't quite handle, like really long fatty acids. That's where a little helper organelle, the peroxisome, comes in. It acts as a fuel prep station. It chops up those long fats into a more usable size. And as a bonus, it also safely neutralizes the dangerous hydrogen peroxide that gets created in the process, turning it into harmless water and oxygen. So we've just toured one tiny, totally self-contained apartment. But let's zoom back out. Remember where we started? This single amazing unit is just one of trillions that all have to work together to build that complex skyscraper that is a human being. So let's just quickly run through the key rooms on our tour one last time. We've got the cell membrane acting as the walls, the nucleus is our main office with the DNA blueprints, the ribosomes and the ER are the workshop and factory, the Golgi apparatus is in charge of packaging and shipping, and the mitochondria provide all the power. Every single part has its own vital role to play.
And that just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Each and every one of these cell apartments is working, communicating, and coordinating with trillions of others just to keep you alive and well. So, if your body is a bustling city of over 30 trillion apartments, it really makes you wonder, who's the landlord?